Hello, and welcome everyone to our session, Fragile Contexts and Indigenous Communities. Thanks so much for joining in. So this is a brief overview of what will follow in the session. I will start with introducing to you the speakers, starting with myself, as I'm the first speaker to discuss our work in extreme citizen science, our methodologies and the tools that we're using. My name is Artemis Scarlatidou. I obviously work for the Extreme Citizen Science Group at UCL, and I will be chairing the session. Second presentation is from Rick Hall and Petra Beignet with title Whose Knowledge Counts? Challenges and Opportunities of Including Non-Western Knowledge Systems in the Citizen Science. Rick is the founder of Ignite, a UK charity that promotes creativity in learning. Petra and Ramin Soleimani Fard work at the ICTA UAB in Barcelona under the LICHI project, an ERC-funded project documenting local indicators of climate change impacts to bring local and indigenous knowledge and voices to climate science and policy. Third presentation will be from Dimitris Argyriou and Nerea Chureira with title ICT-based monitoring in a fragile context, forest protection by indigenous communities in Cambodia. Dimitris is the founder of Forest and Peoples Organization, a new forest monitoring consultancy organization which works with indigenous peoples and technology. And Nerea Torreira Garcia is a postdoc researcher at the University of Copenhagen. We have done some preparation work and we collected the lessons learned from all our cases and from working with communities in this context, and Nerea will present those at the end. We will have hopefully, and if everything goes according to plan, about 5 to 10 minutes for questions at the end. But I would like to ask everyone to ask your questions during the presentation using the Vimeo chat. In your question, please mention the name of the speaker your question is directed to. I'll try to balance questions at the end so that all speakers get an opportunity to answer them. So before I start, I would like to shout out to everyone who continuously contributes to this work. And this includes Muki Hackley, Jerome Lewis, Marcus Morel, Megan Loss, Simon Hoyte, Fabian Mustard, and Rafael Caravagnotti. So we'll start with the extreme citizen science work that we are doing with indigenous communities. So for those who don't already know what extreme citizen science is, we have defined it as a philosophy of situated bottom-up initiatives which take into account local needs, practices, and cultures to work with broad networks of people to design and build new devices and knowledge creation processes which can transform the world. Apart from the philosophy, which defines and frames our work, Extreme Citizen Science, or EXCITES in short, is a research group at UCL which consists of around 20 researchers at the moment from multiple disciplines. Citizen science efforts take place in an era where the public and the scientific community have all come to the realization that Western beliefs about techno-scientific innovation, top-down approaches, and excluding communities from the broader sustainability agenda and debate are highly problematic. This is because people are integral to how their environments are shaped and the diversity that these environments support. And we need to account for those types of knowledges. We need to learn from them and include their views and knowledges into the broader sustainability agenda. This is very much in line with the work that we do in EXCITES. So extreme citizen science initiatives rely on communities identifying and defining the initial problem themselves. Two are the two key components of the extreme citizen science methodology and our approach to engaging indigenous communities, which always initiates a participatory design process. First, negotiating the free, prior, and informed consent process, and second, establishing an open and iterative community protocol. So the FPIC process aims to inform the affected persons about plant activities and their impacts, both positive and negative, verify that the information provided has been understood before explicit consent can be negotiated. The consent is free and informed, highlighting the importance, obviously, of free will and the ability of communities to refuse an intervention. The consent will be also negotiated prior to any community being affected by an external action. So we noted that this is a very challenging and long sometimes process, which further sets the foundations for local capacity building. To sustain the project over its lifetime, we always work towards establishing a community protocol that formalizes the solutions collectively agreed by the communities which participate in the initiative. The first part of the protocol consists of questions and answers about the functioning of the project, such as who collects the data, when the data will be collected, where they will go to collect the data, how the data will be collected, and so on. This is then followed by a session on the technical and methodological support that will be provided to the communities, another one about the logistics, and finally one on the data sharing and protocols. It is important to understand that the community protocol process itself is also an interactive process defined by the local community. Further changes and as new members join the project, they should redefine their new roles, which are all being decided by the local team and need to be documented in the community protocol. Community engagement does not stop with the FPIC and community protocols. Most of the people we work with are very different from the average citizen science user. People are low literate or non-literate. They don't know, in some cases, how to draw or write. In some cases, they have never owned a smartphone before or any other technological devices. In other cases, they do not have electricity to charge the devices. They never had to deal with multiple devices, multiple chargers, and so on. To lower or eliminate any usability barriers, we follow a participatory design for the interface design process, which extends also to an iterative evaluation of the proposed technological interventions. In this context, we build on knowledge from the field of human-computer interaction for development, or HCI for DIN. One example to demonstrate how this process starts is with the development of the pictograms, as shown on the slide, which are then used to collect the data. Depending on people's literacy levels and the other skills, this may be co-designed with the community and the research team, or maybe developed by the researcher, and then they are sold to the community to check whether they understand what each icon means. So the main data collection application that we're using is called Sapelli Collector, and it is an Android-based application which uses hierarchical architecture and pictorial icons for data collection, as shown in the previous slide. We use icons of communities co-design, and so they're easy to understand, they match their local cultural context, and they do not include any text, as most of our communities are, as I mentioned, illiterate or low literate. As an alternative to Sapelli, we have also designed SapMap, which uses NFC cards. Each card shows the pictogram of which data is being collected. Once you're close to that data item for which you want to collect data, you simply tap the NFC card on the back of the mobile device. The device reads and records its accurate location through the GPS sensor. And during that process, the user can also record any relevant information about that particular data item. As you can see, our extreme citizen science case studies take place in different parts of the world. I do not have time to go through all of them now. We'll only mention briefly 3 of them. But you can find more information if you visit our story maps using that link. So the first case study is from Congo, Brazzaville. Benjeli Yaka pygmies of northern Congo, Brazzaville experienced for years an unprecedented exploitation of their local forests and natural resources. For these egalitarian communities, hunter-gatherers, the forest is not only a source of their livelihood, but it is important for their traditions and its spiritual role. In order to support local communities and in collaboration with local NGOs, Sapelli was developed in 2013 and it is used since then with non-literate people to collect data about illegal logging and poaching in this area. The vision of local organizations which collaborated in the project is that the data collected would provide the necessary evidence to report logging companies' behavior and which would subsequently inform the forest law enforcement, governance, and trade legislation. The second case study comes from Brazil. The Pantanal is the largest wetland in the world. It boasts a wide and unique biodiversity. Local fishers are directly dependent on it for their daily livelihood. Current legislation for resource management and consumption in the area follows the scientific recommendations of conservation biologists, which usually assumes that people are fixed in time and space. This gradually in the area led into the people's physical and economic displacement. Sapelli was therefore being used with local communities in these areas since 2015, who collect data about the use of natural resources, mainly their fishing activities and their strategies. The data collected provided evidence that indigenous practices are indeed sustainable, and as a result, local people have been officially recognized as a traditional community, which itself provided them with the right to use their traditional practices in the ways they rely on natural resources for their daily livelihood. And the final case comes from Kenya. In Kenya, Sapelli is being utilized since early 2019 in Narok country, where it is used with Maasai warrior communities. One of the greatest threats that these communities face is the loss of their traditional ecological knowledge and the increased deforestation in the Masai Mara National Reserve. Sapelli is therefore used to assist them in collecting and recording traditional ecological knowledge related to indigenous plants. Within a few hours after our initiative was launched there last year, individuals from the community gathered over 100 data items, and since then they've collected thousands of points with information about the medicinal and other properties of local indigenous flora. So we'll now pass it to Rick Hall and Petra Benier, who will talk about whose knowledge count, challenges and opportunities, including non-Western knowledge systems into citizen science.
Thanks, Artemis. And hello, everyone. Now you can put a face to all those Vimeo chat comments that I've been making around. So I'm really sorry to tell you that Rick has not been able to join yet. So I will just present a bit the part that I was in charge of, and then if he can join, he'll just jump in now or maybe at the end. Let me share my screen. So basically our idea, Rick and I are been working with several projects that touch a bit on what our teams have been talking before. And we wanted to showcase some of them and frame them in this transdisciplinarity idea. And that is basically this idea that as a research approach that tries to address societal problems, including biodiversity loss, climate change, or other conservation issues, by means of bridging interdisciplinarity, so the different collaboration between the more normative academic disciplines like humanities, social sciences, engineering, but also bringing the collaboration of other expertises, so like the knowledge from farmers, from community members, indigenous peoples and local communities knowledge, and also policymakers and so on. So from this perspective, citizen science could be a tool to combine these epistemologies or ways of knowing and not only understand better the problems, but also propose better solutions. Oh, wait, I was told to take this out. Sorry. And one of the examples, the typical example, especially in social ecological system research, of how these ideas materialize is this multiple evidence-based approach. I don't know if you knew it, but it's really interesting that proposes the integration, cross-fertilization, and co-production of knowledge of all these diverse knowledge systems, not only like the social scientists and the natural scientists, but also the local and indigenous knowledge, and especially these non-Western knowledge systems, to be synthesized and peer validated in order to provide an enriched picture of the problem and also to propose better solutions. And so this type of approach is super important in order to achieve this famous empowerment, inclusion, and equity that we all strive to or should strive to obtain when we do citizen science, no? Because the whole idea departs from bringing all these marginalized knowledge systems in a more horizontal way, let's say, that actually breaks down or tries to balance these historical injustices that we are all kind of aware of. And also the idea would be in through transdisciplinarity and also in citizen science that the decision making is trying to be co-produced and not only a one-time thing, but also throughout time and in the long term. So, but despite all these benefits from bringing all these knowledge systems together, it's really interesting that in the citizen science arena, and you have seen this throughout these last days, not a lot of projects are trying to engage these non-Western epistemologies or ways of knowing. No? So basically, I want to present our project now, and if Rick can join later, maybe he can explain the other projects that actually try to do this. So our project we're working on right now, actually it's under development. So please don't be scared if you find bugs and stuff, you can report them. But yeah, it's still ongoing process. It's the open tech platform. And the idea behind this was to create an open source platform so that anyone can adapt and to their own needs. To document and share this traditional ecological knowledge around the world. And for now, we started with these local indicators of climate change impacts kind of project that was the seed funding to develop this, and that tries to bring all these perceptions on impacts of climate change that come and stem from the traditional knowledge of the communities that are being impacted around the world, and to showcase different types of impacts and bring them to not only research on climate change, but also to the policy level. But the project wants to expand further to other traditional knowledge related to, for instance, use and management of wild and cultivated plants. And so all this is super pretty and super powerful, but there's a lot of challenges, and we're going to discuss a lot about them later. But some of the ones that we have more identified were issues, well, especially working in such a global and diverse, culturally diverse context, getting to understand each other in terms of not only language or diversity of languages, even like marginalized languages, but also even in the actual classification and structures and hierarchies of the platform that has been first designed, and this probably can be discussed as one of our big mistakes, top down, and that's why we have secured new funding to actually make this more co-design in the future. But also we identified issues with regarding the intellectual property rights, for instance, of the communities. So what knowledge has to be published and not, and in which conditions. No? So one of the solutions that we thought of and we have implemented is this system where each contribution can be, there's a setting where the user can select which type of publicity they want to give to that contribution. So it can be public or private, and also like what kind of Creative Commons license they want to share that contribution through. So yeah, one of the biggest challenges that we're gonna, and challenges and opportunity, because of course it's the best opportunity to do this better, was these co-creation workshops that we're planning to do with local communities and indigenous peoples platform. That is this facilitative working group that brings the voices of indigenous peoples to the climate change negotiations. And so we have secured the funding, as I said, to do these workshops in 2021. So now with the whole pandemic situation, we are really struggling to, but it can also be an opportunity to imagine how we will do this in this context. And so I was going to give the floor to Rick to explain some of the cases, but maybe if he's not been able to join, I can.
Well, I might be here.
Oh, Rick, nice to see you.
Yes, according to this, I'm in the show, and my slide is on up there as well. So, sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody, and I'm very pleased to be here. And thank you to ECSA for this opportunity just to showcase some of the projects that we've been doing with Ignite. And I now need to try and just orientate myself. I'm not sure how to share the screen. That seems to be happening automatically. But if somebody could go back to showing the slide with the night walks. The work that we do at Ignite is very much based in communities, and by that we mean communities of interest, or what communities have in common, as well as the focus of their curiosity. Now, there's been, I think, a very pleasing interest in this particular conference around participants and what they are bringing to citizen science. And it has been challenging some of the interpretations of what we mean by citizen science. And I think there's a great reference.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, Artemis. Yes, thank you.
So thanks.
You may need to advance the slides for me. I apologize for that. So the projects that we do at Ignite, a little bit of context. We are a charity based in Nottingham. We're not an academic institution. And of course, the emphasis on indigenous, migrant, asylum seeking, refugee, indigenous communities does throw up that dichotomy around quality of data and so on. And, you know, what qualifies and what is this citizen science? And I'm very grateful for ECSA for that paper that came out in April that summarized the survey around what is this citizen science. So the work that we've been doing, this is some work in Nottingham with the Refugee Forum families, and they have come from many different countries. They speak many other languages, and indeed, in some cases, English is not even their second language, it might be their third. And so the projects that we do, which relate to science, are very much, welcome to the slideshow, are very much around combining creativity and curiosity. In order to build confidence in communities. We have to remember that many migrant and refugee families are located in urban environments. They come into cities, and many of them were originally from rural settings, and so there's more than just the usual adjustments that they are trying to deal with. And for me, this particular slide, which has just disappeared, thank you, is the significant picture. Really, is the woman tending the fire. This went against many of our kind of risk assessments and all the rest of it. There's no ologies or acronyms caught up in that picture, but there is very much a memory for her of cooking over open fires. And that's what I mean, I think, by whose knowledge counts, whose narratives are important. And when we come to thinking about data quality, whose data and for whom is it valuable? So those are the kind of key thoughts that we've been developing. And the other value, I think, of an organization like Ignite, there's twofold, really. One is that we often engage scientists, researchers in the projects that we do, but we're just as likely to involve artists. And I think there's a lot we can learn through the practice of community arts, not least because it overcomes the inhibitions of language. And it's a great way of encouraging communities to express their curiosity in creative ways. So the point I'm making is that through these narratives, we achieve both equity and inclusiveness, and we can mediate between communities and research and so on. So there's a kind of two-way facing opportunity there, and it gives cultural validation through narrative. Right, now if it's possible to move through to other slides, that would be great. If somebody knows how to do that, that's lovely. So the case study 3, this is a project that's not being led by us. It's being led by a graduate of a researcher based in Italy, Arianna Cortesi. But this is very much, again, an indigenous community in Brazil. And we are providing a kind of cultural support for this project. And as you can see, it's about cosmology and the narratives that other communities, other indigenous people place on their interpretation of the night sky. So it's very much about, again, the narratives, the chants and the myths about the sky, the way that they will perhaps name and interpret constellations and so on. And so we want to capture and collect those narratives and again, give status to that indigenous traditional cultural knowledge. Let's move quickly through to the last project. This was the project that I was rather hoping that we would be able to report to ECSA this week. We were invited to go and work with the Yurok tribe of First Americans, Native Americans in Northern California, and to establish a Lab 13 as a means of identifying the kinds of questions and research investigations that matter to the families and the local communities there. And a brief word about Lab 13, because it's a space in a school that children manage, and they manage it for their own investigations. And they are assisted and supported in those investigations with a scientist in residence who typically will come from a local university. Excuse me. And we know that the topics that matter to the Yurok tribe are very much about the natural environment and the water quality of the River Klamath and the salmon population there, on which they have relied for many, many generations. And so our hope is that we will still be able to travel to North California, establish a Lab 13 with the school, and then involve the community in the kinds of investigations into water quality, the natural environment, and again, produce evidence that is of value to them. The last slide simply shows the traditional relationship that the Yurok tribe have with the Klamath River and the way that they have been fishing it in a naturally responsible way. Colleagues, that's me. Thank you very much for your time, and I apologize again for the technical difficulties
Now we have to
in delivering this. I now hand over, I think, to Artemis or to Dimitris.
Thank you, Rick. We have to quickly move to Dimitris now. We can't hear you, Dimitris. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you for pointing it out. Thank you for my.
And also, share your screen, please.
I'm sharing my screen. Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. So welcome from my side as well. My name is Dimitris, and I will introduce you to our case of ICT-based forest monitoring by indigenous communities in Cambodia. While the importance of tropical forests in regulating the world's climate are well known, they still remain under pressure from unsustainable resource use. Community-based monitoring, or CBM, has proven an effective approach to inform local decision making. However, it requires standardized data collection by local stakeholders to inform global policies. Remote sensing or Earth observation approaches are increasingly used, but requires calibration by on-the-ground monitoring of legal logging activities and forest inventories. Most important is that the local people participating in CBM find numerous challenges and risk their lives when monitoring and advocating for forest protection, and hence needs our antibody support. Here, we will present you a bottom-up case of a local community network and how they use smartphones and a geographic citizen science data collection application to monitor valuable resources and report illegal logging. Our country of study is Cambodia, that has one of the world's highest national deforestation rates, primarily in the form of economic land and mining concessions. Prairie Forest covers more than 500,000 hectares in the central plains of Cambodia and is the largest lowland evergreen primary forest remaining in the Indo-Chinese peninsula. Hence holds great ecological, economic, cultural and spiritual value for the indigenous Kui and Khmer population. Prairie Land Community Network, or PLCN, is a network of villagers, mainly farmers with little or no formal education, that started patrolling their ancestral forests in the early 2000s as a response to increased illegal logging. In 2014, an innovative partnership was formed between local and international NGOs, the Mission, University of Copenhagen, PLCN, and an IT company. And the aim of the project was to engage vulnerable communities in forest protection in Cambodia. One of the unique features of the project was to develop a smartphone application in order to aid the patrols of the communities to collect documentation about resources and illegal logging in prairie forests. And our main interest was to make sure that the needs of the local communities were met in this process. Hence, we employed a few participatory methods for the design of the app, like focus group discussions to discuss the overall aim of the monitoring program, participatory mapping to identify important forest areas, free listing of the resources and the activities they wanted to monitor, and feedback rounds before release and after major changes. Of course, it was agreed that the PLCN will have ownership of all produced data, and training session followed each new version to make sure patrollers are acquainted to new features. So a smartphone application based on the Sapeli platform that was referred earlier by Artemis as well was chosen as it was developed specifically for use by people with limited experience with technology and low literacy levels. The application was modified by a local IT company based on the PLCN's input and feedback. The PrairieLang app is compiled from three distinct types of information. Reference data like time, GPS coordinates, and dates that are automatically attached to the observation. Primary documentation, a photo and an optional audio recording for every new data point, and a thematic tag, or better, a category that the patroller attaches to the observation. The three main categories that the patrollers were interested to document were valuable resources of the forest, like trees and NTFPs, illegal activities such as logging, poaching, and mining, and reporting interactions with authorities. Each main category has a limited subset of subcategories that add extra information to the observation. At a later stage, two new categories were added to broaden the scope of the monitoring tool: reporting of climate-related events and reporting of threats or instances of violence to enhance the feeling of security to the patrollers. As you can see, categories are all illustrated by drawings to allow participants with low literacy to navigate the app more easily. Once the data are submitted through the PrairieLang app, they are uploaded to a database in the cloud where data manager assess them for their validity according to a set of rules. The objectives of the monitoring as set by the patrollers are to discourage illegal logging and to communicate the findings of the patrols to a broader audience, national and international. Initially, there were 36 patrollers that they were monitoring the forest during their existing patrol activities. In the table that has been included, one can see the advancement of the monitoring capacity of PLCN through the years. In the end of 2015, and after almost 2 years of monitoring, a validation rate of 42% was observed, while the last year the validation rate elevated to 72%. And we can see why in the unvalidated entries. In the first year, there were 46% due to technical errors, while in the last year, this percentage dropped to 20% after a lot of effort. Unvalidated entries due to human error also minimized from 12 to 8% after numerous trainings. In an evaluation that happened in 2017, most patrollers were of the opinion that they understood the PRELANG app and felt that they were able to use it correctly after an initial acquaintance period that higher human errors were observed. Half of the patrollers specifically mentioned problems with uploading data as a key concern, while all of them mentioned the scarcity of areas with stable mobile phone connection in the forest as a major cause for this. The app complexity was greater with each new version. However, the proportion of sub-indicators that were successfully validated increased over time as well. The cost of developing and maintaining the PRELANG app, including database management and reporting for the first 2 years of the monitoring, was about 136,000 US dollars, which is equal to 26 cents per hectare monitor per year, which is only slightly higher than forest monitoring approaches that do not use any technological solution. So pen and paper only. As of this year, data recorded with the PRELANG app were published in 8 monitoring reports and presented by PLCN members at press conferences in Phnom Penh. As a result, the issue of PRELANG deforestation entered in the weekly agenda of national media and has a stable representation in the international media such as Mongabay. The findings of the patrolling of PLCN are communicated through social media in a monthly basis. And additionally, 2 more networks of communities have employed the same monitoring approach in Cambodia, and the innovative approach rewarded PLCN with 4 international environmental awards for their efforts to fight deforestation with such an innovative approach. Finally, after PLCN had petitioned the government to protect PRELANG for 10 years, in May 2016, PRELANG was declared a wildlife sanctuary. However, the full potential of ICT and citizen science in forest monitoring is primarily restricted by a lack of enabling environments provided by the government. Most recently, after the publishing of our latest report in January 2020, PLCN is banned from entering the forest for patrols and received numerous threats of arrest, giving an incremental rise in logging activities inside PRELANG. The extreme amounts of corruption in the country make hard the cooperation with local rangers, but are usually bribed to let illegally logged wood out of PRELANG. On the technical side, the limited mobile coverage is by far the biggest challenge that we are facing, while on the project scale, the ICT approach increased the reliance on external support, which may compromise the sustainability of the project over time. On our future plans, and starting from this year, we have been awarded the funding from the European Union to develop an integrated forest observatory system that will harness the power of Earth observation and satellite imagery, combined with on-the-ground patrol data and drone imagery. Meanwhile, harnessing the experience of PLCN and our team, we are exploring opportunities to apply a similar forest monitoring approach to other countries. If you still need more information, please make sure you follow our website and our Facebook page for timely updates. Thank you so much for your attention. And the floor is back to you, Artemis.
Yes, thank you so much, Dimitris. And now we will pass it to Nerea, who will talk about the joint lessons learned from all the case studies that we presented in this session. Thank you, Nerea, off to you.
Thank you, Artemis. Hello, everyone. So yeah, now I will present some of the lessons learned that all the panelists have put together from what we have learned with working in citizen science in fragile contexts. So, yes. Regarding methodological conclusions, we have learned that it's very important to introduce co-design so we can bring all knowledge systems and different worldviews with equal status, and it's a way of also building trust between different participants. It also promotes inclusiveness, motivation, and long-term participation. It's also important to use simple data collections, and if using technologies, it's good to use simple interfaces or icons so a wide range of people with different literacy levels can participate in citizen science. So we have, of course, also encountered challenges in our work, and some of these challenges are learning opportunities, while others are still ongoing research questions. For example, some of the challenges are posed by the fragile context itself. We're working sometimes in politically unstable conditions, or there is low network coverage, or no electricity, as Artemis was saying before. There are also power struggles. We're often working with the marginalized people or the powerless, and maybe the enabled environment is not the best. Sometimes it's even risky, as we have seen from the cases from Congo or Cambodia. People are risking their lives in order to collect data from illegal logging, for example. And this shows how important it is for these people to collect this data. The design of socio-technical solutions should always fit the local context and its users, and this is also a challenge. We also face language diversity, which is both a challenge and an opportunity. It is a challenge because we need to find ways to communicate and understand each other, and terminologies do not always match or translate between languages or cultures. But it also brings opportunities because we have the chance to see and to learn how other people understand the world and nature, so we can appreciate the world with greater diversity. All the contributions also have to be correctly acknowledged, and there is also information that has to be protected. And for example, indigenous knowledge on plant use, plant locations or uses should be protected by Creative Commons or other licenses to make sure that the local people have complete control and ownership of that information. We also need to address who decides which data is valid and why. There is also an epistemological divide. Is it possible to integrate scientific knowledge with non-Western traditional epistemologies? This is something that we are working forward, as we have seen from the previous presentations. There are also ethical points that we need to take into account. For example, will indigenous people or nations identify themselves as citizens in citizen science? Or is it ethical to bring a certain degree of technological dependency or changing the lifestyle of somebody that is not exposed to technologies? Will these initiatives bring any kind of power imbalances at the local area? For example, who takes the decisions? How are these being taken? Who facilitates the project? Who is the interlocutor? Who is included in the initiative and who is left out? So as I said, these are still ongoing research questions and considerations that we are looking into. And citizen science in fragile contexts also bring opportunities at many levels. For example, these applications can become an advocacy or leverage tools for local people in fragile contexts, which promotes empowerment, and also it allows for local people to outreach and disseminate their local knowledge and realities to the outer world and have a greater impact. It's important to acknowledge that empowerment also comes through proper methodological protocol, and that it's important to involve local people right from the start, and for them to have a control and ownership of the project since the beginning. Data ownership by local people also increase responsibility feeling and data quality, and it motivates people and also promotes long-term engagement. These initiatives also have a lower carbon footprint because if foreign scientists or practitioners do not have to travel to these remote areas, then we also save on carbon from the flights. And people live on site, and this is beneficial, for example, in current times that we are facing international travel bans due to COVID-19, for example. So, as I said before, also by including different knowledge systems, languages, and worldviews, we can also appreciate and learn from different ways of understanding and describing the world. I will now finish with some good practices and positive notes. I will repeat it once again that it's important to involve local people right from the start, to follow bottom-up approaches, address local needs, and build trust, and to spend quality time, especially in the beginning of the project, to know each other and to communicate well. The local context also need to be fully understood and appreciated prior to the design of socio-technical solutions. And this will only happen with the full and active involvement of local communities at all stages of the program implementation, as well as taking a transdisciplinary approach to support the design and implementation of citizen science initiatives. The collaboration should also promote local knowledge and agendas instead of unilaterally trying to fit local knowledge into global agendas or global initiatives. And we should also pay attention at the new norms at the new social norms that emerge at these collaborations. It's of course very important to follow research ethics and codes of conduct like free, prior, informed consent and respect the customs. It's good to think of low-tech solutions and solutions that allow for data sovereignty, to follow iteration loops, and also constantly examine the goals and the means. And it's also a good reminder to be humble and to recognize and allow other forms of knowledge, to be patient with ourselves and be patient with others, because it's a challenging process to integrate different knowledge systems, but the effort is really worth it. And with these words, I will now leave the floor to Artemis again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nerea. Can you continue sharing the slides if possible?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes. So I will, yeah.
So we take this opportunity basically to say a few words about a book that will come out soon, and which also answers to one of the questions that Dilek is asking. Artemis, Muki, and all of you suggest one publication on working with indigenous communities in the context of citizen science. What would that be? That would be that book, which is called Geographic Citizen Science Design, No One Left Behind. Which includes various case studies from using geographic citizen science tools in both the global north and the global south. And it talks about the barriers and the opportunities and how projects can be designed more efficiently to tackle the issues that we encounter in these contexts. It will be published early next year in February 2021. We have a link, which I hope it will be also shared in the Vimeo chat now, where you can check it on the UCL Press website, the table of contents and so on, and it will be open access. Thank you very much, everyone. So we will now try to answer some of the questions that are received in the chat. I'll start with some of them are like comments. Suvarna Parbu Mohan in South Africa says that we're working on plants used for medicinal use and have the medicinal practitioners on board from the beginning. That is great, Suvarna. I think you should talk to Marcos Moreu and Megan Laws, who work with in Kenya with the case study that I mentioned with the Maasai warriors there. The next question is for Petra from Debbie Gonzalez from the University of Melbourne, Australia. And it asks, Petra, how are you planning to manage the languages in the platform? Will it only be in English? Are local names going to be included?
Well, as I said, this is one of the biggest challenges we face, right? So we started by translating all like the user interface and the categories and the classification systems that we have into the main languages that we know as team. So that will be, for now we have French, Spanish and Catalan. And then we plan to include Chinese, German, and Portuguese. We are a big team, but not all of us are working on the citizen science component, so that's also a challenge. But then the thing is gonna get crazy when we get Swahili or I don't know, a lot of local languages that want to participate. So yeah, I was thinking about all this conversation. There was some conversation about translation wikis, and we're really interested in something like that people themselves can translate the platform. So if anybody has any ideas, please put them in the Vimeo chat or get in contact with us because we're really interested in this. We don't have a solution. Sorry, Debbie.
Great. Thank you, Petra. Some other comments. Ono Giller says that Petra and Nick, thank you for the very interesting presentation. He's interested to learn more about the project that you highlighted in your presentation and suggests we get in touch with Rick and Petra directly. Debbie Gonzalez again asks, she says that thank you for including the costs, Dimitris. It was super interesting. And she also asks, no, that is Snails at RMCA, asks that whether we, any of the presentation, we have conducted any motivational studies for the participants. And I think Nerea has done so she might want to say a few words about it.
Yeah. So it wasn't the motivation? Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, he says we have a similar approach in Uganda where we work with people who are already involved in volunteering activities in the communities. Did any of you conduct motivational studies for the participants?
Yes, yeah. So we did a similar. We also did a motivational study in Cambodia when we talked with both people that engage in forest monitoring and people who do not, and we wanted to see why people didn't want to get involved in this kind of citizen science project, and why the people who were actually engaging, they were doing it. And we wanted to see if it was maybe like more of a economic incentive or motivation, or was it more of an intrinsic motivation. And what local people were saying was that they wanted to patrol the forest and monitor illegal activities because it's something that is directly affecting their livelihoods and their culture and their lifestyle, because they depend on this forest for survival. So they really wanted to engage in this initiative.
Great, thanks, Nerea. Ono Giller asks, have any of you encountered any issues with the term citizen science in your work, or do you not use it in the field? And I would like to ask Rick to tell us a few words from his experience.
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily a controversial terminology, really. I think the term citizen tends to apply to Western societies where people can vote or can participate in society. We don't really draw too many distinctions with the projects that we do. People are people; they are participants. I mean, I know that the whole question of is it citizen science? So is it science? Are the participants citizens? Could be a kind of terminological barrier, but we're fairly relaxed about it, and we tend to involve people as participants.
Thank you very much, Rick. Petra, what about in your case? Have you...
I would say we never really frame it as citizen science. I mean, we are in the citizen science conference, but we never go to the participant and be like, do you want to join a citizen science project? I mean, it's more like what you need, communities are detecting some issue, or you think that this might be an issue, and you come and dialogue about what kind of things they want to do, and then it kind of like we avoid the term, I think. So it's not an issue for us. Also, we work a lot also in the Spanish context, because this is also answering one of the questions that was out there about what is traditional knowledge in this. And I think there's an important idea here that is not only indigenous communities, as in like you would imagine, that have this knowledge system, but it's also, I work a lot with elder people in Spain, in the mountains. Just came down from the mountains last week. And these are don't have any problem with the word citizen. So I think like in our cases, we have a very big spread of people that might not be challenged by this concept, I guess.
Yes, I guess I would agree. The same with the extreme citizen science case studies. Dimitris, do you want to add anything to how you explain that aspect to your participants, if at all?
I could relate to what Petra said. We don't go in the field and ask for citizens to join. For them, we are there to save what they love the most, and this is also the most delightful aspect of the project. We characterize it as a citizen science in order to fit into the norms and to reach our audiences. But when we are in the field, it's forest monitoring that we do, and it's for the betterment of their livelihood.
Great, thanks, Dimitri. So I guess we will move to the next question. Debbie Gonzalez asks all speakers, how do you approach project timelines when working with communities who might have timelines of their own? I'll start with the ECSA cases. In most cases, well, in all the cases, you really have to respect people's time frames in their everyday lives, while of course considering but there is a project that comes through and you need to respect that timelines as well. The initiatives take a long time. They're not short projects. They take, in some cases, like over 3 years. And we have people who stay in the field for years to build trust and to ensure that the project runs smoothly and support the local people at the same time while they are there. What about Dimitris? What about your time frames?
Time frames in this context in the indigenous communities is something very, very broad, and time is moving very, very differently. So I would say yes, it is challenging at some point to fit with deadlines, but we learned through time to adjust our project timelines and to make it to make to the donors understand that broader timelines might be needed in order to fit the deadlines. And we have managed to succeed during this time.
Okay, we only have 1 minute, I see here. I would like to, well, there are a few questions which unfortunately we cannot answer here, but we can use the social Zoom chat for that, or by Twitter, you can always email us. If you can share the screen with the survey for 1 minute, as Nerea, that would be great. So if anyone wants to be involved in the work that we do, which we will be trying as a group from this session to continue working together for a little bit longer and work on a research paper. So if there is anyone who works in a similar context, it has to be a similar context, obviously. You can fill in this survey, and I hope someone will also share the link on Vimeo as we speak. And we will get in touch with you so that we can take that into the next step. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And thank you, all of the speakers, for the great presentations. And thanks again for me and for everyone in the session, the conference organizing team, for organizing an excellent conference.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks
everybody.
for the text.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.